Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, my go-to for building a website and online shop. Hello artists! Are you a beginner oil painter and overwhelmed with the endless amounts of colors to pick from and not sure which one to buy? Or are you looking to save some money and buy just a few versatile oil paints that you can mix into a full color palette? Or are you just looking to understand color mixing and color theory better with oil paint? Regardless of the reason, I will always love and recommend practicing with a limited palette of 3 primary colors plus black and white to not only save money and resources, but also to help make color mixing easier to learn and understand. So in today's video, I'm going to show you a quick and fun oil study exercise to demonstrate how I painted 2 nearly identical oil studies, one using a full 12 color palette and the other using a limited 5 color palette. Also, if you'd like to see hundreds of hours of exclusive painting tutorials and monthly art rewards, feel free to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/happydartist. Okay, first I will be using my current go-to palette of 12 colors, which contains ivory black, raw umber, burnt sienna, bohemian green earth, cobalt blue, cobalt teal, alizarin crimson, cadmium red light, raw sienna, cadmium yellow medium, nickel yellow, and titanium white. This is the color palette that was on our classroom supply list at the atelier where I studied, and it's the palette I've grown most comfortable using throughout the years. I'm doing a quick little study of a Bouguereau painting. I chose one that contained a lot of vivid colors that could potentially utilize every color on my palette and therefore show you the versatility of a limited palette later and how we can basically paint 2 nearly identical studies using a 12 color palette and then a 5 color palette. I'm working on a cheap canvas panel that I primed with gesso and toned with bohemian green earth. In this exercise, my goal is to simplify the basic value and color groups into these larger tiles of paint so that I can quickly create an almost low polygon version of the painting that can look comparable to the original from far away or from a thumbnail view. Okay, now that we're done with the first study using 12 colors, I'll show you my limited palette, which includes cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium, phthalo blue, and the same ivory black and titanium white. First, I'm going to try to recreate all 12 colors from my first palette using only the 5 colors from my limited palette. When you have 12 colors, color mixing can seem daunting because you have 12 options to choose from always, and you're never quite sure which colors to pick to add to your mixture, and it's hard to remember how each of the 12 colors will influence each other. But when using a limited palette, color mixing becomes simple and straightforward. When you mix the 3 primaries into secondary colors, you can immediately learn a very basic but extremely useful principle of color theory. Red plus yellow makes orange, blue plus yellow makes green, and red plus blue makes purple, though in this case it's more like a maroon since we're using red and not magenta, but more on that discussion later. You know that if a starting color looks yellowish, that adding blue to it will make it look greener. You know that if a starting color is looking reddish, that adding yellow to it will make it look more orange, etc. Understanding how each of the 3 primaries will influence whatever starting color you have is the key to efficient and accurate color mixing. I also categorize white and black into the blue family. To me, I think of black as a desaturated super dark blue and white as a desaturated super light blue, meaning mixing black into a color will darken it and cool it down, and mixing white into a color will lighten it and cool it down. In terms of trying to mix or match a specific color, I always just start off with my best guess, and that initial color will almost always be wrong, which is totally fine and to be expected. But after I lay down that initial wrong color, I pretty much only have 3 options to choose from to get to the right color. I can add either red or yellow or blue, or maybe black and white, which, as I mentioned earlier, have a similar influence on colors as blue does. I can even experiment with adding a little bit of each color, nudging my color mixture until it gradually looks correct. In terms of value, it's also pretty straightforward. If you add a color with a darker value than your current color, then the value of your color will darken. If you add a color with a lighter value into your mixture, then the overall color will lighten. And as you can see here, we managed to recreate the entire 12 color palette using just 3 primaries and black and white. While I paint this, I want to quickly address the surprisingly controversial topic of primary colors. I'm aware that there's a debate online about what the quote-unquote true primary colors are, with some people claiming that magenta, yellow, and cyan are preferable to red, yellow, and blue. While I love a healthy debate about art, I don't want this video to turn into yet another argument over which primary colors are superior to the others. My personal belief, and feel free to disagree with me, is that you can pick which primary color set you want to use based on the types of paintings you want to create. Sure, I could replace cadmium red medium with, let's say, quinacridone magenta. But if most of my paintings are of a classical aesthetic with natural looking colors and earthy neutrals, I wouldn't ever be painting anything magenta, and instead I would be hand mixing cadmium red medium every time using my quinacridone magenta and yellow. So if I rarely paint anything that's hot pink or vivid purple, then the sole purpose of the magenta would be just to create the red. So why not just choose cadmium red medium to begin with to save myself the hassle? Now, if I enjoyed painting concepts that included a lot of neon hot pinks and bright aqua blues, like the water from a swimming pool, I would probably choose quinacridone magenta and cobalt teal instead of cadmium red medium and phthalo blue. If I wanted to paint mostly like Caravaggio and rarely have a need for vibrant blues, I might just only use reds, earthy yellows, and black, sort of like the famous Zorn palette. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the starting colors you choose to use really depends on the colors you like to paint. So regardless of which 3 primaries you choose, as long as you choose 3 colors, one from the red magenta family, one from the yellow family, and one from the blue family, you will learn the same fundamental principles of color theory from mixing those primaries together. And as you become more familiar with color mixing, you can always buy extra colors to swap into those slots or just to save time later on. For example, I know I can hand mix burnt sienna and raw umber from the 3 primaries that I start off with, but over time, I might as well buy those colors to save myself the hassle of always having to hand mix them. But since I know what those colors are made of, I have a better understanding of how they'll interact with other colors. So now, instead of viewing my 12 color palette as a daunting selection of 12 choices, I see it as divided into just 3 color groups. They're all reds, yellows, and blues with varying degrees of chroma and value. But I'll always know that a reddish color plus a yellowish color will create an orangish color, and so on. Okay, we're about to wrap up here. As you can see, the 2 studies side by side are nearly identical. So we managed to create a 12 color palette using just 3 primaries and black and white. So whether you're looking to get more familiar with color mixing or looking to save money and buy as few oil paints as possible, I hope this video was helpful. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. And of course, you guessed it, my eternal never-ending sale is still going on in my shop, so if you'd like 20% off your order of prints and originals, just enter the code HOLIDAY at happyd-artist.com. And if you're interested in learning more about how to paint and draw, I have lots of art educational content on my Patreon page, including exclusive video tutorials, step-by-step photo tutorials, live streams, podcasts, and even surprise art gift boxes. all available at patreon.com/happydartist. I'd love to have you join my Patreon family. A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and supporting the art community. Squarespace is the best platform to create a professional website and online shop. Their beautifully designed templates are easy to use for beginners and look great on both desktop and mobile. I've sold my art through Squarespace for almost 10 years, and I can attest to the quality of their online commerce features, whether you want to sell digital or physical items. They also provide useful analytics that help you make the most of your online business. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/happydartist to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Also, if you want to check out more artworks, works in progress, and just random daily artist adventures, feel free to check out my Instagram, and you can follow me at the handle @happydartist.